My son left me alone at an airport in a foreign country without money, without documents, without hope. He wanted to get rid of me once and for all so he could take my house for himself. But when he opened the door to the house, I was already standing there smiling. "Oh, you're back. I have a surprise for you." That surprise ruined his whole life. I returned from the restroom to find them huddled together like conspirators. Rodney and Cora, heads bent close, whispering with an urgency that stopped the moment I approached. They sprang apart as if I'd caught them doing something shameful. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling into my seat at gate 17. "You two have been quiet this morning." Rodney didn't look up from his phone. "Fine, just tired from the trip." Cora's smile was too bright, too sudden. "We're just ready to get home. Can't wait to sleep in our own bed." We still had 90 minutes before our flight to Seattle. The week in Puerto Vallarta had been good. Beaches, dinners, the kind of family time I thought we'd lost after Rodney's grandmother passed. But something had shifted this morning. The air between us felt thick, wrong. I watched Rodney's thumb scroll without reading anything. Cora fidgeted with her boarding pass, folding and unfolding the paper. Neither of them looked at me. 20 minutes later, Rodney stood abruptly. "Mom, we need water and some snacks for the flight. You know what we all like. Can you grab stuff?" I started to rise. "Sure, we can all go." "No, you go." He pressed a $20 bill into my palm, his fingers cold despite the terminal heat. "I need to make a work call and Cora has to hit the restroom. Here's $20. The insistence in his voice didn't match the simple errand. He stepped back, creating distance, eyes fixed somewhere past my shoulder. I glanced at Cora. She was already staring at her phone. "All right," I said, feeling the crisp bill. "Be right back." The airport shop was small, tucked between a currency exchange and a coffee stand. I took my time at the shelves. Rodney liked the expensive imported water with the blue label. I grabbed 3 bottles. Trail mix for Cora, the one with dried cranberries, protein bars for me. The checkout line crawled behind a family juggling 2 crying children and a stroller blocking half the aisle. 12 minutes passed, maybe 14. When I rounded the corner back to gate 17 with the plastic bag in hand, the seats were empty. Not just empty cleared. No backpacks, no jackets, no trace anyone had been sitting in seats 14, 15, and 16. Other passengers occupied different chairs now, scrolling phones, reading magazines, oblivious. The bag slipped from my fingers. I yanked my backpack off my shoulder, hands shaking as I unzipped the main compartment. My spare shirt was there. Toiletry bag. Nothing else. The inner pocket, where my passport always stayed, was empty. Side pocket, no phone. Front compartment, no wallet. My hands moved faster, checking every space twice, 3 times, hoping I'd somehow missed them. Nothing. Gone. All of it. I grabbed the shopping bag and half ran to the gate counter. A young woman in an airline uniform looked up from her computer. "The couple sitting in 14 and 15, did you see where they went?" She typed, eyes scanning. "Evan's party. They took the earlier flight to Denver. Standby upgrades. Departed 20 minutes ago." "Denver?" My voice jumped louder than I intended. "We're going to Seattle. That's my son." "Their boarding passes were for the Denver connection," she said gently. The terminal tilted. Denver, not Seattle, not home. "Did they leave anything? A message?" Her expression softened. "No, ma'am. I'm sorry." I walked back to the empty seats, sat down heavily, and pulled out the 20 from my pocket. Still there, still crisp. The only money I had in the world right then. $20. He gave me $20 and took everything. The plastic bag sat beside me. 3 bottles of water, including Rodney's favorite brand. Trail mix, protein bars. I'd spent $12 being thoughtful. 8 remained. I stood, legs unsteady, and made my way to airport security. The officer behind the desk had kind eyes and a tired face. "My son took my passport," I said, the words absurd out loud. "My phone, my wallet, everything. He just left me here. Do you have any identification? Any way to prove who you are?" "I have nothing. $20 and a bag of water bottles." She wrote on a form, asked questions I answered mechanically. Names, addresses, flight numbers. She gave me a case number and suggested the U.S. consular agency downtown. Her sympathy was genuine, but couldn't change the facts. I walked away, forms in hand that meant nothing without ID. The terminal stretched ahead, shops, restaurants, gates full of travelers with phones and wallets and futures planned beyond the next hour. I passed a family boarding their flight, parents shepherding children, everyone accounted for, everyone belonging somewhere. In the huge windows, my reflection showed a woman alone. The backpack hung empty from one shoulder. The plastic bag dangled from my other hand. Behind my reflection, planes lifted into a cloudless blue sky, engines roaring, promises of destinations and arrivals. One of them carried my son. I watched them climb and disappear as something hard and cold settled in my chest, where trust used to live. The terminal sounds faded. Announcements, rolling luggage, conversation. All I heard was silence and the question I couldn't answer. Why? I breathed. Again. The shock lifted slowly like fog revealing terrain beneath. Stranded, yes. Helpless, no. The businesswoman in me, dormant since retirement, woke up. First, identification. Second, money. Third, home. I made a mental checklist the way I used to before board meetings. The information desk directed me to the U.S. consular agency. I walked 20 minutes through streets where tourists haggled over silver jewelry and locals sold fruit from carts. The office was small, efficient, American flag on the wall, photos of the president. A woman at the desk looked up. "Tell me what happened, Ms. Evans. Start from the beginning." Her name was Patricia Henderson. I explained it all. The vacation, the airport, the empty seats. My son left me at the airport. Took my passport, my phone, my wallet, everything. She listened, pen poised. He's been living in my house rent-free for 2 years. I think he wants to keep it. Something shifted in her expression. Professional distance giving way to something personal. She set down her pen. "We can issue an emergency passport. 3 business days minimum. Requires a police report and payment of $135. I emptied my pockets. $8, a few Mexican coins, a breakfast receipt from 3 days ago, the $20 bill. Patricia excused herself, returned 10 minutes later with paperwork and news. Payment deferred until I reached home. The Emergency Assistance Fund would help with immediate needs. I'd pay it back. "You're not broken," she said, sliding forms toward me. "You're angry. Angry people find their way home." Outside, I sat on a bench, forms in hand. A woman approached. Maria from the airport information desk. I recognized her. "Do you have family to call?" "Friends?" "My son was my family. I have neighbors, but no way to reach them." She nodded. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the furthest away." My father, similar story. Different details. Same betrayal. How did it end for him? He survived. Built something new. You will too. She drove me to a hostel in her old Honda. $15 a night. Clean. Safe. She refused the $2 I offered for gas. "Some betrayals cut deeper than others," she said. The hostel room held 6 bunk beds and the smells of salt air and laundry detergent. I took the bottom bunk in the corner. My roommates, a pair of German backpackers and a construction worker from Guadalajara, shared their dinner. Bread, cheese, fruit. The girl lent me her phone. I dialed my home number. It rang, no answer. I tried again an hour later. Still no answer. Where was Rodney? Day 2, I walked to the police station downtown. An officer took my statement through a translator. Passport stolen, phone stolen, wallet stolen, by my son. His eyebrows rose. "Your son, he lives with you?" "In my house, yes." "And you believe this was planned? The tickets to Denver instead of Seattle? The timing? The standby upgrade?" "Yes, planned." He typed slowly, printed the report, stamped it, and handed it over with a look that said he was sorry, but this wouldn't bring anything back. That night, lying on the hostel bunk, the ceiling fan clicking its steady rhythm, a memory surfaced. Last month, Rodney visiting more often than usual, helpful, attentive. Then, "Mom, We should update your medical directive just in case. Simple form, sign here. The document had been on his laptop screen. I signed with the electronic signature pad, trusting him completely. Never saw a printed copy. Never questioned it. The realization hit like cold water. That wasn't a medical directive. I sat up, startling the German backpacker across from me. What had I signed? Power of attorney? Property transfer? The possibilities churned, each worse than the last. Day 3, I walked Puerto Vallarta not like a tourist, but with purpose. What does Rodney want? The house. What does he think? That I'm trapped here. What's his timeline? At least a week before he expects me home. That was my advantage. Surprise. Patricia handed me the emergency passport at noon. Thin, temporary but official, and an envelope. $600 cash from the Emergency Assistance Fund. Pay it back when you can, she said. I can see you will. I found an internet cafe, $1 for 30 minutes. Seattle Direct, $420, I booked it for the next morning. Rodney's flight went through Denver. He'd mentioned meetings there, 2 days, maybe 3. I'd be him home by at least 3 days. Back at the hostel, I made my own checklist. Document everything. Change the locks. Find that paper I signed? Get a lawyer. Make Rodney explain himself face to face. Not revenge, justice, there's a difference. The German girl asked if I was all right. I must have looked grim. Maybe he doesn't want to know, she said, meaning Rodney not answering my calls. That's what I'm counting on, I said. He thinks I'm stuck here. He's wrong. The next morning, I boarded the flight to Seattle. Economy, middle seat, between a mother with a sleeping infant and a teenager with headphones. My emergency passport rested in my shirt pocket, $165 in my sock. As the plane taxied, Puerto Vallarta shrank. Beaches, hotels, the airport where everything changed. The wheels left the ground. I didn't look back. My mind was already in Seattle, already at my front door, already planning the expression on my face when Rodney walked in and found his mother waiting. The seatbelt sign went off. The flight attendant rolled the cart. Water, please. Free. Save every dollar. 3 hours and 40 minutes to Seattle. Rodney had no idea I was coming. The wheels hit the runway with that jarring thud that means you're home. Rain-dark clouds, evergreen hills, the familiar airport buildings, Seattle. Home, but not refuge. A battlefield. I waited while other passengers jostled for bags and shuffled toward the exit. Patient, methodical. I had time. Rodney didn't know I was coming. The rideshare driver had a Seahawks air freshener on her mirror. Young, chatty at first, then quiet when she sensed I wasn't. She pulled up to the house 47 minutes later. Pale blue Craftsman, white trim, the porch I rebuilt 5 years ago. The garden waiting for spring planting. $850,000 of real estate. My life's work. My security. Rodney lived there rent-free and wanted to take it all. I paid the fare, $47, added 3 for tip, and thanked her. I stood on the sidewalk with my nearly empty backpack, looking at my own house like I was seeing it for the first time. Elizabeth? I turned. Daniel Kowalski emerged from next door, white hair catching the afternoon light, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, cardigan despite the mild weather. You're back early. He walked over, expressions cycling through surprise, confusion, concern. Where's Rodney? Is everything all right? The questions came fast. Daniel had lived next door 12 years. Retired history teacher, observant by profession and nature. He knew the scent of trouble. I decided quickly. An observant neighbor was almost as good as a friend. They came back early. Different flight. I had some delays. Different flight? His eyebrows rose. That seems odd for a family vacation. Tell me what you saw when they were loading the car, I asked. We stood on the strip of grass between our driveways. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Early morning, 3 days before you were due back. Boxes, bags, more than seemed normal for a vacation. I waved, but Rodney didn't wave back. Seemed focused, intense, premeditated, careful, hidden. What time? 6:30, maybe earlier, before most neighbors were awake. I filed it away. Thank you. If Rodney comes by while I'm out, don't tell him you saw me. Understanding dawned. I haven't seen you. You're still in Mexico, as far as I know. Exactly. I retrieved the spare key from its hiding place, the fake rock near the rhododendrons my mother planted 20 years ago. My fingers remembered the motion. I unlocked the door, disarmed the security system, the code unchanged, which meant Rodney expected no interference, and stepped inside. The house smelled stale, closed up, unaired. I moved through the rooms, speed increasing. Living room, the grandfather clock missing from its corner of 30 years. Dining room, silver service gone from the china cabinet, gaps like missing teeth. My bedroom, the jewelry box my mother left me, emptied of her rings and bracelets. The study, my Omega watch, collectible, worth $2,800, absent from its case. The vintage Leica camera missing from its shelf. Each missing thing was a small theft. Together, they formed a pattern. Rodney hadn't just abandoned me. He robbed me first. My home office occupied the converted sunroom. The desk faced the garden. Centered perfectly on it lay a manila folder. I opened it. Legal documents with official seals and notary stamps. The top page read Deed of Gift in bold type. I scanned quickly. Property address mine. Grantor, Elizabeth Evans. Grantee, Rodney Evans. Consideration, love and affection. Date, 4 weeks ago. My signature at the bottom. Witnessed, notarized. My hands didn't shake. They should have. Instead, they were steady and cold. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was frozen solid, sharp enough to cut. I walked back outside. Daniel was watering his plants, waiting without prying. May I borrow your phone? He handed it over. I photographed everything. Every empty space where valuables used to sit. Every gap on shelves, the open watch case, the missing camera, the desk drawer, the deed of gift from every angle. Evidence. Business had taught me. Document everything. Assume nothing. Trust nobody. When I returned his phone, he asked, Elizabeth? If you need anything, if there's trouble. There's trouble, I said. But I'm handling it. Inside again, I picked up the landline, it still worked, and called my bank. This is Elizabeth Evans. Account ending in 7743. I need to verify there's been no unusual activity. Security questions. Mother's maiden name, first car, street I grew up on. The representative checked. Everything looks normal, ma'am. Last transaction 4 weeks ago, automatic utility payment. No attempts to add authorized users or change beneficiaries. One small relief. Rodney took objects, took the house on paper, but he hadn't drained the money. Maybe couldn't, maybe didn't have time, maybe planned to do it later. Another advantage? I still had resources. I sat at my desk with the deed of gift in front of me and remembered. 1 month ago, Tuesday, Rodney brought lunch, sandwiches from the deli I liked. We ate, talked, laughed about nothing. Then, Mom, I updated some documents for you. Medical power of attorney, living will, that stuff. You should review and sign to stay current. His laptop was already open, document on the screen, signature pad connected. I signed electronically, trusting. Never saw a printed copy. Never questioned what it actually said. That Tuesday, that sandwich, that signature, that's when I lost everything. I stood in the living room as darkness gathered outside and spoke to the empty house. You thought I'd be stranded. You thought I'd be gone long enough to establish possession. My reflection stared back from the window. You thought wrong. Morning light cut through the east kitchen window onto the table where I sat with instant coffee in a chipped mug. The list I'd made the night before lay in front of me. Items crossed off, new ones added, priorities circled twice. Top of the list, lawyer. On Daniel's borrowed laptop the previous evening, I'd searched. 3 real estate attorneys downtown, all experienced in property disputes. The name that appeared most often with successful outcomes, Margaret Chen. At 8 a.m. exactly, I dialed her office. A practiced receptionist offered dates next week. My son stole my house, I said. I have the document. I need help today. Silence. Then a new voice. "This is Margaret Chen. Tell me what happened." I gave her the condensed version, hitting key facts. She asked 3 questions. "Is the document notarized?" "Yes." "Is your signature genuine?" "Yes." "Did you know what you were signing?" "No." "Come in at 11, she said. "Bring the document and any identification you have." I prepared for the meeting like a business presentation and gathered everything. I brought the deed of gift, my emergency passport, bank statements, photos of the stolen items, and Daniel's written statement about seeing Rodney load boxes, everything organized chronologically in a manila folder. I dressed carefully, pressed shirt, slacks, jacket. Appearance mattered. People judge credibility by presentation. Her office was downtown on the 20th floor, a corner view of Puget Sound. Margaret Chen was smaller than I expected. Maybe 53, precise in movement and speech. Gray-streaked black hair pulled back severely. The room smelled like paper and printer toner. Law books lined 2 walls. She gestured to the worn leather chair across from her desk, shaped by countless clients with countless problems. I sat and placed the deed of gift on her desk like evidence at trial. She put on reading glasses and examined it, her expression steady while her pen moved quickly across a legal pad. 5 minutes later, she looked up. "This is a properly executed deed of gift. The notary seal is legitimate. The language is standard. Your signature appears genuine, is it?" I nodded. "Then, legally, as of the date on this document, your son owns your house." The words hit like blows. "However," and the word carried weight, "if you can prove you were deceived about the document's nature, we can argue fraud." She swiveled her monitor toward me. The deed filled the screen, enlarged. "Walk me through the signing." "What exactly did your son tell you?" I told her he said we were updating my medical directives, power of attorney if I became incapacitated. "Makes sense." "You're 63. Did you read the document before signing?" It was on his laptop, small text. He scrolled quickly and called it standard language. I never received a signed copy. I assumed he'd filed it with my records. Her pen flew. That's our angle. Misrepresentation and concealment of the true nature of the document. She copied everything, returned my originals, and zoomed in on the notary block. This was done carefully. Professional, premeditated. "I'll need to interview the notary." She typed more notes. "This will cost money. Retainer, court fees, possibly experts. Are you prepared?" I told her I sold a business 3 years ago. "I have resources and this is worth every dollar." "Realistic numbers?" "Retainer today, $5,000. If it goes to trial, $20,000 to $40,000 more. Maybe higher if he fights hard." I didn't hesitate. "I'd write the check." "Our odds?" "If we can prove deception, 60-40 in your favor. Maybe better with the airport abandonment adding context. But fraud is hard to prove. I'm not walking away from my house. I didn't think you were. That's why I cleared my schedule." The police station came next. East Precinct, afternoon, fluorescent lights, scuffed linoleum, metal chairs. I filed a formal complaint. Theft of property at the airport, stolen passport, wallet, phone, stolen items from my home. The officer typing the report was young, late 20s. "The suspect is your son?" "Yes." "And he lives with you?" "In my house, yes. The house he's trying to steal." She looked up at that. "This is a civil matter, ma'am. We can take the report about stolen items, but property disputes go through the courts." I kept my voice level. "The theft happened in Mexico. International. The stolen items have serial numbers." "That's criminal." She typed faster and asked for numbers. I provided them. Watch and camera documented for insurance, and estimated the silver service at TYE 3,500. 90 minutes later, she handed me a case, number and a tone that suggested I shouldn't hold my breath back at Margaret's office. I watched her work, typing rapidly, printing, signing, gathering. "Motion to invalidate deed of gift based on fraud and undue influence," the header read. "Request for expedited hearing given the living situation dispute." She collated and stapled. "Your son will be served. He'll know you're back. He'll know you're fighting." "Good," I said. "I want him to know." The locksmith arrived at 5. Company van, toolbox, a professional named Frank. These are good locks. Lasted well. Why the change? Security upgrade. He worked efficiently. Front door, back door, garage entrance. New keys, new deadbolts, new security. Not my business, Frank said, installing the last deadbolt. But the old keys won't work anymore if someone has copies. That's the point. Understood. These are pick-resistant. Better protection. $340. Money well spent. He handed over 3 sets of keys. Old locks are disabled. Nobody's getting in with old keys. I tested each lock twice. Solid, secure. My house again. After he left, I walked room to room, testing windows and bolts. I pocketed 1 key set, hid the second in a new spot, kept the third on my desk. I nudged furniture 6 inches here, a rotated chair there. Small changes that marked territory and made the space mine again. Evening settled over Capitol Hill. I stood at the front window with new locks behind me. Filings submitted, reports made. My house, my fortress, my battleground. Across the street, lights flicked on in neighbors' homes, normal lives continuing. Mine hadn't been normal since the airport and might never be again. The new phone I'd bought sat silent on the coffee table. Rodney didn't know the number. He thought his mother was still in Mexico, helpless, abandoned. Wrong. 6:47 p.m., 8:47 in Denver. Was he at dinner in some hotel, planning his return to his house? The uncertainty bothered me less than it should. I had changed the field. 2 days passed. I spent them preparing. Documents spread on the coffee table. New keys in my pocket. Phone charged. Recording app tested. I moved through the house like a general inspecting fortifications. Late on the second day, a car door slammed. I parted the curtain an inch. Rodney's silver Honda sat in my driveway. He stared at the house. Even from inside, I could see confusion dawning. Cora came around the passenger side and whispered something. I let the curtain fall, counted to 5, and waited for a knock. Instead, a key scraped the lock once, twice harder. The old key, useless now. Rodney cursed softly. "What's wrong?" Cora's voice cut through. "Locks jammed?" More scraping. Nothing. Footsteps circled to the back door. Another try. More confusion. They returned to the porch. "Call her," Cora said. "She doesn't have her phone," Rodney muttered, but he tried anyway. Somewhere in the house, my old disconnected phone buzzed once and died. My new phone rang, unknown number. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom, is that you?" "It is. Where are you?" "I've been trying to reach—" "I'm home, Rodney." "Inside the house." "Your keys don't work anymore." Dead silence. "What? How did you— when did you—" 3 days ago. "Come to the front door. We need to talk." I opened the door but stood in the frame, not inviting them in. Rodney looked wrung out, clothes rumpled by travel. Cora stood half a step behind, eyes sharp, assessing. Rodney put on his concerned son expression. "Mom, thank goodness you're safe. We were so worried." "What happened at the airport?" "We looked for you everywhere." I raised a hand and he stopped. "I know what happened. You sent me to buy water. You flew to Denver. You took my passport, my phone, my wallet, my money. You abandoned me in Mexico with nothing." His mouth opened and shut. I stepped aside just enough to reveal the coffee table stacked with documents. "I have something to show you." I held up the top page so they could read the header. "Motion to invalidate deed of gift based on fraud." Rodney went pale. "That document you had me sign, the one you called a medical directive, was a property transfer. You stole my house on paper before you abandoned me." Cora's hand clamped on his arm. Her voice was ice. "We need a lawyer." Rodney recovered some steel. "That deed is legal. My lawyer already reviewed it. Your signature's properly notarized, legally binding. This house is mine. You're trespassing." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police for unlawful occupation." I didn't flinch. "Go ahead. Seattle Police East Precinct already has my report. Case number 774821. Theft at Puerto Vallarta Airport. Stolen items from this house before the trip. Collectible watch, vintage camera, silver service. Our neighbor saw you loading boxes. His finger hovered, then stilled. You reported me. I reported theft, criminal acts. The police have your name, description, and flight information. Call them. See what happens. I showed my screen, the red recording dot visible. This conversation is being recorded. Washington is a two-party consent state, and I'm informing you now. Everything you say from this point is documented. Rodney's phone lowered. Cora tugged his arm and hissed something urgent. This isn't over, he said. No, I answered. But it's not going the way you planned. They backed off the porch and left. I watched their car disappear, then closed the door. The new lock clicked solidly. I leaned against it, breathing slow. First round, mine. A text from Daniel. Saw them arrive and leave. You okay? I replied, fine, thank you. I gathered the documents, refiled them. Motion, police report, bank notifications, locksmith receipt, a paper trail of resistance, a paper trail of war. Then my phone rang, Margaret Chen's office. I expected questions about the confrontation. Instead, her paralegal's voice. Ms. Evans, we've received notice from opposing counsel. Rodney Evans has retained representation. Robert Michaels, property disputes. He's filed a counter motion asserting the deed's validity and requesting immediate possession pending court decision. I sat down. The battle had truly begun. 3 days later, I was back in Margaret's office for strategy. She slid a thick brief across the desk. Michaels is thorough. He's filed for expedited possession, claiming you're unlawfully occupying your son's property. The irony didn't need stating. I read his motion. Legal language, simple story. I was the unreasonable parent. Rodney, the victim. He's separating the criminal allegations from the property dispute, Margaret said. He'll argue you're using criminal complaints to relitigate a gift you regret. That's not what happened. I know. The judge must be convinced. We need more evidence, direct evidence of fraud at the signing. A week after the porch confrontation, Margaret called with worse news. Rodney had filed an emergency motion for immediate possession, claiming homelessness, hotel costs, legal ownership by deed, irreparable harm. It's manipulation, Margaret said, but judges sometimes grant possession pending litigation when the paperwork looks clean. We have to counter fast. I authorized another $3,500 retainer. Costs rose like floodwater. Daniel mentioned the social media attack over the fence one evening. Elizabeth, I don't believe it, but people are talking online. Your daughter-in-law posted, I don't use social media. He showed me Cora's carefully worded plea. My husband's mother gave us her house, then changed her mind and locked us out. We're homeless while she lives in our legal property. Family shouldn't treat family this way. Comments, dozens, split between support and suspicion. Old acquaintances asking what was happening. My privacy invaded. My reputation attacked. Should I respond? I asked. Talk to your lawyer first, Daniel said. Anything you say could end up in court. So I stayed silent while she lied. Sometimes silence is stronger than arguing, I told myself. People who matter will wait for the truth. 2 weeks in, Margaret scheduled a financial talk. Expense projections spread across her desk. Initial retainer $5,000. Filings and discovery $3,500 already. Full trial with depositions and experts $40,000, $60,000. Maybe more if Michaels dragged it out. I need you to understand the commitment, she said. This is mortgage money, retirement money. Rodney is betting you'll settle. I met with my financial advisor, Patricia, who managed my retirement for 8 years. She ran scenarios. $50,000 over 6 months. Sustainable. $80,000 over a year. Damaging. Not ruinous. The question, she said gently, is whether winning is worth the cost, even if you keep the house. Later, alone, I answered myself, yes. 2 weeks in, Robert Michaels called with a first settlement overture. Ms. Evans, can we resolve this without lengthy litigation? My client will lease the property back to you at a reasonable rate until you find alternative housing. The property is mine, I said. I'm not leasing my own house. The deed says otherwise. I'm trying to find middle ground. The deed is fraudulent. There's no middle ground between ownership and theft. His tone cooled. Then we'll see you in court. I documented everything obsessively. Daily logs, a master timeline, financial records, photographs, a guest bedroom turned war room with labeled folders and filings in chronological stacks. When doubt crept in, papers everywhere, balances shrinking, Cora's performative heartbreak online, I remembered the airport gate, the empty seats, the missing passport, the $20 bill, and my son's calculation. Doubt hardened back into resolve. 4 days after hiring Margaret, I met our investigator at a downtown coffee shop, neutral ground for initial findings. She arrived with a tablet and a folder, ordered black coffee, and got to it. "Your son is drowning," she said. $47,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards. 3 in collections. 1 threatening suit. Spreadsheets glowed red. Delinquencies, overdues. Started 18 months ago. Lifestyle inflation, designer purchases, expensive dinners, vacations Cora posted. Income couldn't support it. 6 months ago, a creditor filed intent to sue. That's probably when he began planning. I stared at the totals. So he took my house to pay his debts. "Tried to," she said. "The vacation timing and abandoning you were about establishing possession before you could interfere. But you came back early, best decision you made. Another week and he'd have changed locks, moved in, and claimed possession while you were stuck." She slid over emails from 3 real estate agents. February, subject lines, "Property evaluation request." He'd sent my address, asked for market analyses. The replies, 830K, 865K, 840K, average 845K. He was shopping my house before I signed anything. Before Mexico. Planning. "There's more," she said, lowering her voice. "This part's legally gray. Data broker search records. Courts might question it. But look. Queries from Rodney's IP. How to convince parent to transfer property. Deed of gift versus quitclaim. Can property transfer be reversed? What happens if someone abandons an elderly person abroad? That last one dated February 18th made my stomach turn. He researched abandonment 6 weeks before doing it. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Margaret reviewed the new evidence in her conference room. The debt shows motive. The realtor emails show premeditation. The search history is powerful but potentially inadmissible depending on how it was obtained. We'll include it, but expect Michaels to challenge. She stacked our exhibits in presentation order. You'll testify about the signing, exactly what Rodney told you, how he displayed the document, that you never saw a printed copy. Then we show planning. She drilled me with mock cross. "Ms. Evans, you signed this, correct?" "Yes, but no buts." "Yes or no?" She stopped us. "He'll try to reduce you to yes, no, resist. Judge Morrison allows explanation. Use that." After 2 hours, my answers were clean, precise, less defensive. The hearing arrived, King County Courthouse, Department 15, late April morning. Judge Patricia Morrison presided. Mid-50s, a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Margaret. Across the aisle, Rodney, Cora, and Michaels, the first time mother and son had shared a room since the porch. Rodney wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret opened, fraudulent transfer through misrepresentation, elder exploitation, the abandonment context. Michaels countered, valid gift, proper execution, plaintiff's remorse dressed as fraud. Judge Morrison listened, unreadable. I took the stand, swore to tell the truth. Margaret led me through the chronology. Rodney and Cora living rent-free. The February signing. What did your son tell you about the document? That it updated my medical power of attorney. Standard language for healthcare decisions if I became incapacitated. He said I should sign to stay current. Did you read it thoroughly? He displayed it on his laptop. Small text. He scrolled quickly and said it was boilerplate. I trusted him. He's my son. Michaels's cross came sharp. But you did sign it, Ms. Evans? Yes. You're educated, ran a business for decades? Yes. Capable of reading legal documents? Yes. Yet you claim you didn't understand what you signed. I understood it as presented, a medical directive. I didn't know it was a property transfer until I found the recorded deed weeks later. He pivoted. Isn't it true you had a disagreement with your son after this trip? There was no disagreement. There was abandonment and theft. Answer the question as asked, the judge said. Margaret presented the investigation, Rodney's debts, the realtor emails, the planning timeline. Michaels objected, relevance. Financial hardship doesn't invalidate a deed. It establishes motive for fraud, Margaret argued. The judge reviewed our exhibits and made notes. I'm ordering expert examination of the signing circumstances, she said at last. An independent notary protocol expert will evaluate whether proper procedures were followed. Both parties will make their experts available. Hearing continued for 6 weeks pending expert report. I drove home from the courthouse thinking about Rodney's face during testimony. Pale, rigid, eyes fixed on the defense table. The hearing was continued for 6 weeks pending the expert report. He didn't testify. Michaels probably advised against it. Smart lawyering. Why put someone on the stand who might crack? Daniel called as I pulled into the driveway. How did it go? Ongoing, I said. The judge ordered more investigation. That's good though, right? She's taking it seriously. Yes, but seriously doesn't mean quickly. Inside, I found a voicemail from Margaret. Call me when you can. Development in the case? Not urgent, but interesting. Her tone suggested something worth discussing. I dialed her back, ready to learn what came next in this endless battle. 2 days after the preliminary hearing, her development became clear. Michaels filed a motion for a psychological evaluation. Arguing my age and possible cognitive decline affected my understanding of the document I signed. I sat in Dr. Rachel Foster's office for the court-ordered assessment. This evaluation is requested by opposing counsel, she explained, professional and neutral. They're suggesting cognitive impairment affected your ability to understand legal documents. I'll assess memory, comprehension, decision-making capacity. The results go to both attorneys and the court. I understood the implication. Rodney's lawyer was calling me mentally unfit. We began with memory exercises, lists to recall, then longer-term recollections of my business, my career, significant decisions. I'm going to read you a list of 10 words. Try to remember as many as possible. I repeated all 10 back in order. Excellent recall, she said. For a recent significant decision, I described selling my equipment supply company in September 2022. 3 offers. Evaluated on price, terms, and outcomes for employees. Closing for net proceeds of $320,000 after taxes. She nodded and wrote, detailed memory, clear reasoning. Good. A week later, Margaret called. Dr. Foster's report is in. You're officially mentally competent. She read excerpts. Intact memory function. Normal processing for age. Clear decision-making capacity. No signs of dementia or significant impairment. Fully capable of understanding legal documents and making informed choices. Michaels tried to paint you as confused, she said. This demolishes that narrative. That same day, our investigator, Sarah, called with fortunate timing. Found your notary. Frank Morrison, freelance, works from a home office. I did an informal interview. He got talking. She paused. Rodney paid him $300 cash to notarize your signature at a Starbucks. Not his office, not your home, a coffee shop. Frank admits he felt uncomfortable but needed the money. Protocol shattered. 3 days later, Margaret and I met Frank in his small Ballard office. Mid-40s, thinning hair, apologetic. I shouldn't have done it that way, he said. Proper practice is to verify circumstances in a suitable location. But Rodney said his mother was too ill to come to my office. Mobility issues. Could I meet them at a convenient spot? He paid cash up front. When I got there, you seemed perfectly healthy. Walked in fine, ordered your own coffee. I wondered about the story, but Rodney rushed everything. My mom has an appointment after this. We're short on time. I notarized quickly. It felt wrong. Margaret drafted his statement with legal precision, detailing the Starbucks meeting, the cash payment, Rodney's false claims, and the procedural irregularities. You understand this could end your notary business? She asked. Frank nodded. I do. But what I did was wrong. I should have refused. One evening, Daniel knocked. Cora called me, asked me to pass a message. She says you won't answer Rodney's calls. I hadn't blocked Rodney's number after the confrontation. What message? Daniel looked uncomfortable. They're offering to settle. They'll sign a quitclaim, return the house legally to you in exchange for $200,000, one-time payment. They walk away. The case ends. $200,000, a quarter of the house's value. Consider your legal costs, she'd added, according to Daniel. This ends it now. My answer was immediate. No, tell her no. Margaret wasn't surprised when I relayed it the next morning. They see the evidence piling up, the competency report, the notary's statement, the financial desperation, the premeditation. Cora's smart enough to know they're losing. That's her exit strategy. But if we win fully, you keep your house free and clear. Settling means paying a fortune for what they tried to steal. I met her eyes. We're not settling. I'm not paying ransom for my own property. Sarah delivered her final report, a comprehensive summary that cost $2,000 and was worth every cent. Margaret filed it as supplemental evidence. This is devastating to their case, she said. 3 weeks passed in a paper war, our filings, their counterarguments. My total outlay hit $17,000. 4 days before the scheduled hearing, Margaret called with an urgency I hadn't heard before. Judge Morrison moved our hearing up to 2 days from now. She's reviewed everything and wants oral arguments immediately. Good or bad? Unknown. But judges don't expedite cases they plan to dismiss. She's seen something that demands quick resolution. Be ready, this might end soon. One way or another. The choreography of justice. All rise. We stood as Judge Morrison entered, sat when she did. Margaret leaned close. Whatever happens in the next few hours determines everything. I nodded. Morrison looked up from her notes. I've examined all submitted evidence. This hearing will address the motion to invalidate the deed of gift based on fraud. Mr. Michaels, you may begin. Michaels adjusted his tie. Your Honor, this case is simple. Adult son, aging mother, legitimate estate planning conversation. She signed a deed of gift, signature genuine, properly notarized. Months later, after a family disagreement, she claims fraud. Financial difficulties don't prove fraud. Pre-planning doesn't prove fraud. Family conflict doesn't prove fraud. The deed stands on its legal merit. He sat, confident. Too confident. Margaret rose, lifting Frank Morrison's statement. Your Honor, the notary's sworn statement details procedural violations that undermine the notarization. The signing occurred at a Starbucks. Mr. Morrison was paid $300 cash, roughly 12 times the usual fee, and he was told Ms. Evans had mobility issues, demonstrably false. She held up emails. Before any gift, defendant contacted 3 real estate agents for valuations of this very property. He priced the house like merchandise. That isn't estate planning. It's theft planning. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Michaels, how do you explain your client paying 12 times the normal notary fee for an unusual location, and the false statements about mobility? Michaels stood. Perhaps he wanted to accommodate his mother's schedule. The fee reflects convenience. Skepticism flickered across the bench. And the false statements? He hesitated. I'd need to confirm with my client. Ms. Chen, the judge said, fraud is a difficult standard. Can you meet the burden to show misrepresentation of the document's nature? Margaret nodded. Yes, the notary will testify Ms. Evans was never told the document's true nature. The defendant controlled the presentation, rushed the process, and never provided a signed copy for review. Michaels, rolling the dice, called Rodney to the stand to counter the narrative. Under direct, Rodney claimed he explained the transfer, and I wanted him to have security. Margaret's cross was surgical. You told the notary your mother had mobility issues. I said she preferred not to travel. Did she have mobility issues? Yes or no? No. You paid $300 cash for notarization. I wanted to ensure quality service. Did you tell your mother the document was a medical power of attorney? He paused too long. I may have mentioned medical planning. May have or did. It was part of a broader discussion. You're not answering the question, Mr. Evans. I watched his tells, hand to nose when hedging, eyes darting to Michael's, voice rising. He was lying poorly. Morrison called a brief recess. Margaret took a phone call, then requested to approach. She spoke quietly with the judge and Michaels, returned to me with news. Police executed a search warrant on a storage unit in Rodney's name. They found your watch, camera, silver service, everything you reported stolen. Validation, rage. When court reconvened, the judge addressed both sides. I've been informed that items allegedly stolen from plaintiff's home have been recovered from defendant's storage unit. This adds a criminal dimension to the civil case. I'll refer the matter to the King County prosecutor. Rodney went paper white. Cora gripped his arm and whispered. Michaels argued at sidebar, returned looking defeated, and murmured to Rodney, who slumped. Last hope evaporated. The ruling came without theatrics. Based on the evidence, the court finds by a preponderance that the deed of gift was procured through fraudulent misrepresentation. The notarization violated standard protocols. The defendant's testimony contained material inconsistencies. The pattern of premeditation combined with subsequent abandonment in Mexico and theft of property establishes an intentional scheme rather than a legitimate gift. The deed is hereby declared null and void. Title remains with plaintiff Elizabeth Evans. All stolen property must be returned within 48 hours. Criminal matters are referred to the King County prosecutor. The gavel fell. Case decided. I drove home in afternoon sun. The house, legally, officially, permanently, was mine again. I pulled into the driveway and sat a moment. Same house I returned to after Mexico, but different now. Vindicated, protected. Mine. I unlocked the door with the new key Rodney couldn't use and stepped inside. It smelled like home. Not triumph. Home. Through the window, I saw Daniel's porch light. He opened at my knock, read my face, and nodded. You won. I won. We sat on his porch drinking the whiskey he saves for special occasions, talking about baseball, his garden, the neighborhood, normal things. After months of abnormal, normal felt extraordinary. I walked back under the streetlights, locked my door with my key, and stood in the quiet living room. Tomorrow would be aftermath. Tonight was peace. 2 days later, I drove to the Seattle Police Evidence Facility to collect what was mine. Sterile building, fluorescent lights, bureaucratic forms. An officer brought out a plastic bin labeled with my case number. My grandfather's Omega watch, face scratched but running. The Leica camera, leather case worn but intact. The silver service, tarnished but restorable. I signed for them and carried the bin like something fragile. Home, I unwrapped each piece. I wound the watch, set the time, placed it in its case on my dresser where it belonged. I checked the camera's shutter, still crisp, and returned it to its shelf. The silver required polish. I spent an evening with cleaner and soft cloth, lifting tarnish, restoring shine. Methodical work, meditative. Each piece restored felt like part of my life returned. Margaret called with the judgment order. Rodney and Cora are jointly liable for $15,000. Your court costs, compensation for emotional distress, and theft damages. Can they pay? I asked. Her humorless laugh answered. They can't pay their current debts. This judgment goes to the back of a long line, but it's on their record, permanently. I didn't need the money. I wanted the accountability. 2 weeks later, the prosecutor's office called. Assistant Prosecutor James Riley, young and overworked by the sound of him. Ms. Evans, we're offering your son a plea agreement. Plead guilty to theft and attempted fraud, receive 2 years probation, restitution to you, and community service. No jail time due to lack of prior record, but a permanent conviction. I don't want revenge, I said. I want accountability. If probation accomplishes that, accept the plea. He sounded relieved. Thank you. Some victims push for maximum punishment. This is proportional. Proportional. The word felt right. I met with an estate attorney, Richard Taft, in Bellevue. You want to ensure your son can never inherit this property, he said. I nodded. Never. Not if I die tomorrow. Not if I die in 30 years. Richard drafted a new will on his computer with clear language. I explicitly disinherit my son, Rodney Evans, from any claim to my estate. Upon my death, my house shall transfer to the Seattle Housing Foundation to be used for low-income elderly housing. I signed and felt a strange peace. My son tried to take everything. Now he gets nothing. Not as punishment, as protection. Margaret delivered her final bill in person, a professional courtesy, one last meeting to close the case. $9,500 total, she said. I absorbed some research costs and reduced my hourly rate for the final month. I wrote the check without hesitation. You saved my house and probably my sanity. Worth every penny. She smiled slightly. Most clients complain about legal fees. Most clients don't have sons who try to steal their homes. Early August, a warm Seattle evening, I sat on my front porch with iced tea and a newspaper. Down the street, a moving truck backed into the apartment complex. Curiosity drew me to watch as furniture, cheap pieces, some I recognized from Rodney's room years ago, was loaded. Then I saw them. Rodney carrying boxes, Cora directing movers with sharp gestures. Eviction. Couldn't afford rent anymore. I stayed on my porch, half hidden by the rose bushes, and watched my son's life collapse into cardboard and a rental truck. He looked thinner, older, defeated, moving mechanically. Cora climbed into the passenger seat. She didn't help. Rodney took the driver's seat. The truck pulled away. Gone. I sat in silence, processing what I'd witnessed. I won. Justice happened. My son was destroyed. None of it felt good. It just felt done. Later, Daniel came over. He'd seen the truck. That was them, wasn't it? Yeah, evicted for non-payment. How do you feel about that? Empty? Not happy, not sad, just empty. You won. That's supposed to feel good. Winning meant my son lost everything. That's not victory. That's survival, he nodded. Sometimes survival is the only victory available. September approached. Summer faded toward fall. My house stood solid on its Capitol Hill foundation, legally and emotionally mine. The garden needed attention. I spent a Saturday weeding, planting fall bulbs, preparing for next season. Daniel helped. We worked in companionable silence, then drank beer on my porch and watched the street. You ever think about selling? Moving somewhere easier? He asked. I considered. This house almost got stolen from me. Now that I've fought to keep it, I'm not leaving. Fair enough, he said. Evening gathered. My phone rang, unknown number. I let it go. My life had returned to peaceful unimportance. Lawn maintenance, grocery lists, an upcoming dentist appointment. No lawyers, no courts, no betrayals. Just life. The phone stopped. The street stayed quiet. The house stood. I sat on my porch in my home, surrounded by the simple victory of having survived someone else's greed. Justice isn't always satisfying, but it's always necessary. I learned that these past months at great cost, financially, emotionally, familially. Was it worth it? I looked at my house, the pale blue paint, the white trim, the porch I rebuilt, the garden I tend. My house, my life, my terms. Yes, it was worth it. Every dollar, every stress, every painful moment. Because some things can't be priced. Some things have to be defended. And some victories, even when they hurt, are still victories worth winning.